Hey everyone, Kumar Dattatreyan here with Agile Meridian and the Meridian Point. Today we're going to do something a little different. Even though I'm introducing the topic, my partner, my friend, colleague, Glenn Marshall is going to be interviewing me about the Disruptor Method. So this show is all about disruption, innovation, and myself and my colleagues at Agile Meridian have created a framework that we call the Disruptor Method that helps individuals and companies disrupt themselves. So we're going to dig into that in this episode here. What is the Disruptor Method and how does it help companies become more disruptive, to be more competitive, be more resilient, and all of those things? So without any further delay, let me bring Glenn to the screen. Hey, Glenn.
Hi, Kumar.
And I guess you're going to grill me today.
I guess so. I've seen the testimonial you've got, a powerful testimonial, a very, very exciting, very powerful statement from the CEO. So I'd like to hear more about the Disruptor Method.
Okay. Well, the Disruptor Method was born about, I'd say, 2.5 years ago officially, but it's something that we've been doing for a long time, probably more like 5 or 6 years. We just didn't call it that. And you can think of it as a collection of patterns and practices that we bring to the fore in service of our clients. And you can think of it as really about building a cohesive leadership team as the primary driver of the creation of this method. It was formed to help a leadership team become more of a team. So in most medium to large firms, leadership teams may meet quarterly or maybe even less frequently. They meet for a yearly strategy session, then the leaders go off and try to implement the strategy, and it doesn't work all that well. Maybe they meet more often, but the thing is that the strategy is so big and it's so unwieldy, it's hard for them to sometimes put those things into practice. And so what the genesis of the Disruptor Method was to teach these leaders and imbue in them some skills, some capabilities to help them become more collaborative, to visualize the things that they wanted to do from a strategic standpoint, and give them some tools to help take that strategy and turn them into tactical things that they and the people that they lead could start doing. Not that they weren't doing these things, they just weren't doing them well. And so that's kind of the genesis of the Disruptor Method. It's and I can get into more detail with more questions, of course, but I wanted to stop and see what questions you had at this point.
So it always starts with the leadership team. You're talking top down.
It always starts with a team that is leading something. And so it's evolved since the initial genesis of it was always the leadership team, the C-suite, or a combination of leaders that made up a cross-functional, cross-departmental, if you will, cross-divisional set of leaders. And the reason we did that is because most of the challenges that we saw is that these people weren't collaborating with each other. The leaders are often rewarded for goals and outcomes that aren't aligned with other leaders' goals and outcomes. And so they end up being in conflict with each other. And so what we set out to do was bring the leaders together and create goals that were aligned across the different divisions, departments, if you will, of the company. And of course, if we got into the C-suite, then they were already meant to be aligned. The C-suite is the CEO and the CIO and the CFO and the CMO and so on and so forth. And so these people all had different sort of responsibilities, if you will. However, oftentimes their personalities were too alike. They sometimes didn't get along. Very smart people, but when you put a group of smart people together in a room, sometimes the collective intelligence of the group goes down, right? So maybe individually they had an IQ of 120, but you put these 5, 6, 7 people together, and collectively they behave as if they have an IQ of 80, and so they make poor decisions. They are in conflict, and so the Disruptor Method is really meant to help them understand themselves, their personalities, how they work, how they could work with each other, and then work with that. Once they have that awareness and understanding, it leads to, okay, well, I need to adopt a different persona, if you will, because I am a, on the DISC spectrum, I'm a sort of command, take charge person, and all my colleagues are the same. We need more people that are analytical, and more people that are collaborative, and more people that are so on and so forth. And so people start to realize that they need to develop some skills and capabilities in these other areas. Even though it may not be their natural strong suit, they need to develop those skills or bring people in that balance them out.
So do you, you said something interesting about the rewards not being necessarily aligned. You don't change the reward model. You just find common ground.
Well, I mean, sometimes it does lead to that, right? And in our engagements, one of our clients, or still a client, I believe they did change their reward model for, again, this was a cross, what we call a catalyst team. So leaders from different divisions in a company, along with the part of the C-suite, maybe all of the C-suite. I don't recall. But this group, what we do is we first do an assessment. We use predictive index, which is similar in many ways to the DISC assessment. And we do that to really not for only for our benefit, so we can get to know them, but really more as much for their benefit, so they can get to know each other better. And we then, after this assessment, we also interview each person individually, find out what their goals, their values, things like that. What are they, and how can we help them achieve their goals? And then we put them. We do a workshop, a strategy session, right? So it was interesting in one of the testimonials that they said that this wasn't like the normal strategy session where you come up with a bunch of goals and they get put on a shelf until you meet again in a year's time. This was different. They felt it was different because it was much more collaborative. They were creating these goals together because of the way the workshop is set up. And again, we start with an understanding of their personality types. And even before we get into the workshop, we say, okay, your team is unbalanced. What do you want to do about it? And in the case of one of the clients, they actually brought someone else into their team to balance them out because they didn't have that skill. They didn't have that personality trait, if you will, on their team. They needed someone more analytical and more of a bridge type person that will pull different viewpoints and experiences from the others, so that it can be a more cohesive team.
Okay.
I'm going to stop because I'm going on too long. I'm sure you have a question.
You mentioned catalysts. Are there different flavors of Disruptor Method?
Yes. So one is the focus just on the C-suite. And I mean, they're naturally a catalyst team, right? Because they are catalyzing change and ideally change, innovation, and the delivery of value in their respective discipline. If it's marketing or sales or legal or whatever it might be, engineering, technology, each of them has a certain unique perspective and skill that they bring to that table, that C-suite. Mm-hmm. And so they're catalysts. Okay. We consider them that. In some cases, we combine some of the C-suite with the next layer down, if you will, the next rung down, the more of the doers, if you will. They're still leaders, but they are translating. They're the translators between strategy and execution. Okay. And so the catalyst, we call that a catalyst team because it may not include the C-suite, any of the C-suite. We may actually start at the VP or the AVP level. Okay. And those are the catalyst team members that represent the different departments because the C-suite is too busy and whatever. And so but we still get in relatively high. And okay. So then we give them different, pretty much the same charter and the same type of workshop and the same sort of experience, but we also help them coach the C-suite, right? In that case. And then there's another flavor of this where it's a product team. And so it's product and engineering and architecture if it's a digital product, or if it's a physical product, then it still could be architecture because it may be a cyber physical product, but it also could include mechanical engineering sort of type of skill set, right? So a product team would be a new product that is being launched or a product suite that's being launched, and so we want to get them to be as almost like cutting a steel thread, if I'm going to use the X-scale term, right? So cutting a steel thread through the organization to put the catalysts, if you will, for that product together as a team. They are the catalysts, right? But they're focused on the product, and again, we implement a DRI model, a leadership as a service model, in any of our flavors to teach them how to lead by serving the next layer in the hierarchy, if you will. And a lot of these organizations we go into are very hierarchical, but what we want to do is ensure that they have a mechanism to implement or to sort of manifest servant leadership in an effective way. Because a lot of people talk about servant leadership, and it's sort of, as a leader, if you're in a traditional environment and you're being rewarded for being the type of leader that got you to that position, it's hard to know how to be a servant leader. And so this disruptor method gives them the tools to be a servant leader, because what they're doing is deferring decision making to where that decision needs to be made through the leadership service model and through the DRI structure that we help them set up.
That's an important point. Have the decision where the data is, where the knowledge is. Okay, so can you drill down a bit on this? I get it with the personality. That actually is an interesting angle. I've done them sometime, but you're making an interesting point. Perhaps I should do them more. Great way to understand about each other. Great way to start team building. Can you drill down a little bit on the strategy, or am I going to be stealing all your thunder here?
No, I can give you a high level without divulging too much of the what goes into the sauce, if you will, right? So the strategy comes out of the workshop, and so after we do the workshop around the personality types and we do a teaming exercise, then my partner Mike Jebber, he has a really good saying that he calls emptying the glass. And so a lot of times people come in, and their glass is full. They have no capacity to take in anything, right? Because they've got all of these issues that they're grappling with, they're thinking about. They come into these strategy sessions thinking, my God, I'm going to spend 3 days here. Well, I'm not going to get anything done. I got work to do. I've got people to serve, and so on and so forth. And so we do this exercise that we call emptying the glass. There's actually a video about emptying the glass, and if you search our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see that. And all that means is we're giving voice to these people to lay it out there. Okay, revealing their biases, revealing their issues, their struggles, whatever. We just get it all out. Let's get all the issues out on the table, right? And we affinity map those things. We categorize those things, and then we say, all right, so these are some of the challenges that you have. Let's go a little deeper. And so we do something similar to a SWOT analysis. We call it SORI, another video in our YouTube channel that describes what SORI is. And all it stands for is strengths, opportunities, risks, and impediments. And so a lot of the emptying the glass is going to come out in this SORI exercise, especially in the risks and impediments section. And the strengths and opportunities are really more about what makes your company successful. What are your strengths? And given the risks and impediments that you've mentioned, where are the opportunities to improve? So this SORI exercise becomes the backbone, if you will, for their change effort. Because ultimately, that's what this is. Disruptor Method is about disrupting the way they work and using SORI as a catalyst for that change. After that, we do very similar to value stream mapping. We do a value stream mapping exercise, I'm just going to call it that, to discover where all of these impediments and issues show up. Now, when I say value stream, I'm talking about the company, the high level operational stream or streams, for the different product lines that they may have. Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the issues? Where are the constraints? And we typically serve mid-sized firms, so we can, they're not so complicated that we can't do this in a half a day to understand their value stream and have them start looking for the areas that could be improved in how they deliver value to their customers and deliver an impact for the company, right? And we think of these as two connected but separate things: customer value and business impact. And so we're always asking those questions during the workshop. Is okay, so where's the impact here? Where's the outcome for the customers? How does that get served? What's getting in the way? Looking again, plumbing the information from the SORI workshop. We are priming them to start thinking about their process and at a high level. Again, we're not getting that deep. We're just getting at a high level. These leaders, what they know, and sometimes they don't know. They have to go find the people that are actually on the, if it's a manufacturing plant, the shop floor, to bring them into the workshop and explain a part of the process, a part of the value stream, right? And so that takes a little time, but it's well worth it.
Okay. This is all pretty straightforward and very good stuff. Once you have identify the impediments, then what do you do?
Yeah, so the 3-day workshop really ends with a plan, right? So how are we going to tackle all of these things that came out of the workshop? So we build a set of, similar to OKRs, we call them COBIs, customer outcome, business impact, with measurable, with measures that we attach to it. Very similar to OKRs. We have our own acronym, right? We call it COBIs. And so these COBIs form the backbone of what they're going to do with us over the next at least 6 months. Okay. And we set a cadence for, when you talk about OKRs or 4DX, the 4 disciplines of execution, any of these models where you have goals and outcomes that you're trying to track over time, they all work great as long as you have a cadence of accountability set up, right? And so too with our model. COBI depends on, and the Disruptor Method depends on an accountability model, right? So within the team, whether it's a C-suite team, a Catalyst team, a product team, it doesn't matter. It's who is the DRI for the process that we're trying to institute in that team, and how will they make decisions. So we set a decision protocol for the types of decisions that they will make, and we ensure that they are DRIs for the different types of work that's happening in that team, the people that are responsible for the different types of work, so that the leader can do their job, whoever's appointed the leader. And in some cases they rotate that role, the leader role, if you will, and their job is really very simple. It's if the group cannot reach a decision on whatever it is that they need to decide, the leader picks this deciding vote, because based on what they know of that decision, the expertise that's needed to take that decision through to a conclusion. So again, if they can't reach consensus, then the leader picks the decider, the DRI, if you will, and the DRI goes and says, okay, this is how we should proceed. And the decision protocol has already been agreed to as part of the workshop, because we teach them that. And we get their commitment in the workshop that we're going to follow this decision model.
By decision model, you mean the leadership as a service?
Correct.
Okay. So you mentioned the cadence and the accountability. That sounds like where the magic is. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah. So we lead the workshop and we establish that cadence. We start out weekly and then we adjust based on how they're doing. And we're there just to coach. We don't facilitate it. We ask one of them to facilitate it. right?
Okay.
So there's a facilitator that gets picked, but they pick them. Again, they don't have to be the same person, that can rotate as well, and a leader. And so they facilitate it. We are there to coach them, to mentor them. Actually, in reverse order, we're there to teach them, mentor them, and then coach them as they get better at facilitating themselves and making decisions themselves,
Okay.
and following up with those decisions that they make at levels. Again, what we want them to do is not just work the leadership as a service model in their team, but disseminate it to teams that are actually doing the work, right? And so there's a bit of coaching that we do. We want to turn that team into a set of disruptors. So we are the disruptors going in. We want to make them the disruptors that stay, right? And that's our aim. We don't want to be there forever. We want to go in. We want to disrupt how they work. We want to disrupt how they collaborate. We want to make sure that that they set up systems, visual systems that can track their work. Under the covers, it's agile, it's lean, it's all of those things, but we don't use any of the jargon. We are focused on the results and the results only.
So these weekly meetings, is that like a retro, a demo, and how can we improve?
It's basically a Kanban. It's a weekly Kanban. So they track their board, they track the work on the board, they track the accountabilities on the work that's and they track the board from, as any Kanban team would. They look at it from right to left, and they move things.
Okay.
And it permeates through their organization, because this team, while they may be the C-suite, they can't do this work. They have to run the company, right? But what we're teaching them are the skills and the capabilities for them to employ a more modern style of leadership, so they can empower the people that they lead to make these decisions in a way that can permeate through the various streams, if you will, of work that they help manage.
Now, there's one thing that always intrigued me about this. I don't know if you want to talk about it or if that's just something you keep in your back pocket, but it was the guarantee.
Yes, we do offer a guarantee, and the guarantee is just that if they don't see value in the process, if they're not able to implement their strategy, that in the stated time, and we say we don't put a time limit on it. We say it usually takes 4 to 6 months. Our fee is a flat fee, and we will stay as long as it works. But we guarantee that it'll work as long as they do the work. I mean, we're not doing the work. We are teaching them to do the work. So our guarantee is pretty ironclad. We will refund the fee if they do their part and it still doesn't work.
Okay.
But we've never had to do that, because it's always worked.
Okay. And one of the things about that I was intrigued by is they have to do the work. They have to show up for these meetings, and if they don't, the guarantee is off. So there's a bit of an incentive for them to show up.
Yeah, we do track the meetings. The effectiveness of the meetings. It's a very simple thing. Anyone can do it. So when you're in a meeting, what we do is we just do a fist of 5 at the end of the meeting. 5 fingers up, I got immense value from the meeting. 4, I got pretty good value. 3, yeah, it was okay. It was good. 2, I'm not sure why I'm here. 1, this was an utter waste of my time. Right? And so we want to know. We want them to make sure that these meetings, these Kanban events, and other meetings that they may have are valuable.
Okay.
So there's so much waste in corporate culture, where, especially after the pandemic, where everything has to be decided in a meeting. So we want to make sure that these meetings are valuable. They result in an outcome that is expected by every member, every attendee in the meeting.
So then, as part of the Kanban meeting, you would ask hard questions. What's going on with this, and people would state that, and they would set an expectation for where there would be the next go round.
Exactly. Yeah. So, the work moves, just like in any Kanban team. The work is going to move, and when it doesn't move, then that's when we step in and we offer mentoring, coaching, and so on, guidance on how to get things to move. Because these things don't happen overnight. It takes, 2 or 3 months for things to click with a client or organization. And it's not just the people that are in the Disruptor Method, a part of the Disruptor Method experience. They have to learn some things, learn how to work together, learn how to work as a team. And it takes a little while for that team to form and gel and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then that process has to repeat in the people that they are empowering to make these decisions, and actually the doers that do the work, right? And so our role is to help them coach those people. And if needed, we can help, but typically our engagement is peripheral. We're there as coaches and advisors, not as implementers. We're not embedded in the client organization doing the work. And so for this to work, the onus is on the people that have hired us to help them. It's on them. It's on you. It's on you to do the hard work so that you can disrupt yourself the way it should be.
Yep. I also like what you said a moment ago, and in fact, this is I think coaching integrity. The job of a coach is to work themselves out of the job.
Yes. And the thing is that since we've been doing this for a while, and really this is my partner's Mike Jebbers. We all had contributed, of course, but he's been doing some version of this for a long time, 5 or 6 years. So all credit to him. And as we put this thing together and we added pieces and parts, we borrowed stuff from Xscale, we borrowed stuff from our experience. We were trying to decide what assessments to use. So we're using predictive index, and we have used other ones too. We've used DISC, we've used AQI, which measures adaptability. So the adaptability and resilience of a team. So we use various instrumentation to help the team, the leadership team, the client organization really get a better understanding of themselves. And that sets the stage for everything else, in my opinion.
And the leadership as a service. I think that's very powerful as well.
Yeah, right.
But it's fascinating. This doesn't sound that complicated. It sounds fascinating to me that such a simple approach has produced such strong results as the testimonial tests. And you can even offer a guarantee. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's like that, right? Simple rules yields in complex behaviors. I mean, just look at traffic around the world. Cars, for the most part, don't hit each other. People stop at red lights and go on green lights and go really fast on orange lights. And people cross when the little sign goes off and so on. Simple rules, right? Complex behaviors that usually people don't get hurt. And so what we are doing is that rather than come in with a big, fancy, complicated framework, we are coming with something simple, right? Kanban is a very simple framework. We're not saying do Kanban. What we're saying is do simple. Keep it simple. Measure what you're trying to achieve. Understand yourself first. Get all the... Can I say this? Well, I can say it. It's my show. Get all the shit out on the table, and and then figure out a way to deal with it, right? And so I think that's what sets this apart. I'm sure it's not unique. I think the combination of patterns is maybe unique, but it's not unique per se. I've met people on this show that do things that are similar, just not to the extent that we do it. Right. And so that's what makes our technique, this method, unique.
I think the thing that's always fascinating me about this, and we've talked about this several times, is the guarantee. The fact that you can offer a guarantee gets people's attention, yet it also has another side to it in that, well, in order to get the guarantee, you have to show up. So it's kind of self-reinforcing. And maybe it would, if you didn't have the guarantee, it wouldn't work. But because you have the guarantee and everybody wants that, that encourages them to show up.
I think so. I think the guarantee does add a certain element of authenticity. Maybe I don't know It's like, okay, we will stand behind our promise as long as you do.
Yep.
Right. And so if you don't stand behind your promise, then it's a reminder that they're paying good money to a company to help them. But if they don't do their part, then that money is going to be wasted. How many times have you gone into an organization to help coach them through some change effort, and there's just no or very little participation from the people that are part of the change, right? You can't get them to play the game. It's like you're going to go play a game of tennis, and there's no one on the other side of the court, right? You're just hitting a ball, it doesn't come back to you. Or you're trying to applaud, but there's only one hand. There's no other hand to meet you, right? Don't you get that feeling sometimes in change efforts? And that's what we're trying to eliminate.
Okay. How many levels I just thought of another question. So you mentioned that you come in at a fairly senior level, and you train folks at that level, and you then guide them to be disruptive at the next level down. Is it always just one level, or does it sometimes go to 2 or 3 levels?
It can certainly. I mean, ideally what we do is we start somewhere, either a steel thread product team or org level, or maybe we start at the product level and the results are so good, we sort of propagate that through their organization for however many product lines that they have. And then we go up, right? We maybe start in the middle and head up. And in some cases we start up and head across, build a catalyst team and maybe go into the product lines. In some cases, they achieve proficiency so fast that they don't need us to do that. They just need advisory. So they, especially in a smaller firm where it's 100 employees, 150 employees, they're not going to need us for that long. We do the catalyst or the C-suite team, and that may be all they need, because as long as they have the right people in place, they have the right talent. That's one of the things that we stress in our Disruptor Method is talent. How do you hire and retain good talent, right? So it's not just enough for the C-suite or whoever we're advising to become really good collaborators and visualize their issues and delegate responsibility. If they don't have the right people to delegate to, that's not going to work. That delegation requires, again, 2 people, right? The person that is empowering the other person to do something, and that other person to actually do it. Because if they don't do it, then what that does is breeds a lack of trust. And so now this person that sort of empowered this other person to do something, they're not going to trust them anymore. And the behaviors are going to go back right where they were before. Right. And so we advise on many more things. We coach on many more things. And how do you build a resilient workforce? How do you ensure that your employees stay engaged? And it's not by working the same job for 10 years. You've got to give people room to innovate, to grow. And it's not just titles. It's not just promotions. It's grow in areas that they are more intrinsically motivated to grow in. And so finding those types of opportunities for companies. And smaller companies are easier because generally it's more family oriented. They think of themselves as a family. When you get into larger firms, it's a little harder.
And so in terms of going down, I think you said sometimes you will coach at a certain level and then maybe down one more. If somebody gets stuck, they may invite you to go and help one-on-one coach with a particular team.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, the Disruptor Method in its current form is probably 2 years old. We've gotten some really fantastic feedback on it, great testimonials. We need more. We need more case studies that we can add, right? So as we grow it out and start helping the larger firms, because I think that's the real challenge is how do we scale this Disruptor Method to a larger firm? And my thought there is that it can apply to any size company, any size firm. It's just where do we start, right? And one of the things that always has intrigued me is the X-scale approach of the steel thread. And that's something that we have adopted, I don't think intentionally, but just it's almost like convergent evolution. He calls it that. We have been doing it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's very similar to the X-scale approach of the steel thread. And so we've employed that with product catalysts, right? And the idea is that you start in a product line and then you start to take those learnings. It may be a thick steel thread, where in X-Scale's version, it's maybe a thinner. You start with one team and you propagate that out, and you go out that way. This is maybe a little thicker. You're talking about product leadership, and you're imbuing them with the capabilities and skills to lead product development in a way that is nimble. I'll use the word agile and resilient and adaptable, right? And that permeates through the entire product organization for that product line, but that takes time.
And then you replicate it across.
And you replicate it, right?
The challenge in a large organization will be cross-functionality. They tend to have a fairly rigid. Finance is I'll pick on finance today. Finance tends to control things, and they're kind of off on the side, so they're not on the team. So one challenge I would see as you get into large organizations is getting all the expertise on the team.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, we may never go to the large companies, because our sweet spot is really helping the mid-sized firms. They have less of those types of bureaucratic nonsense to deal with, in terms of financing things and stuff like that. And so they have more flexibility. They can be more responsive to changes in the market. They have to be, right? Because they're still fairly small. So we'll see. We'll see how it evolves.
I would encourage you to try larger companies, like just bigger. Just keep growing until you find a problem, and then of course you'll adapt. You'll be agile about being agile.
Right.
You said this is fixed price. There's one price for any implementation.
Well, it's really, so we have a model we call DEEP, and it stands for Discover, Engage, Enable, Produce. And the DEEP model is sort of, if you want to call it, it's our full engagement, right? So we discover the issues, we engage with the team at whatever level they are in, we enable them to do something, and then we're there in an advisory role to ensure that they're producing the result that they set out to do. And so we have sort of our DE engagement, where it's the 4 to 6 month plan, if you will, where that is the sort of the inexpensive plan, if not inexpensive, but it's not that expensive really when you think about the value that people get from it. And that incorporates the discovery and the engagement model. We leave it up to the client organization to self-enable and to produce. If we're going to be there in an advisory role, and we can stay there longer if needed, but generally we see results in the 3rd and 4th months. So by the time the 6th month rolls around, we have essentially covered DEEP. We have that part of the organization is functioning way better than it was before. Now, if we did a full DEEP engagement, that generally takes 1.5 years, and that's where we are sort of propagating this model, and we are doing this for several teams, and we are much more involved, much more engaged, much more enabling, because we're providing training, not just coaching. So formal training for their people and so on, and that's a longer engagement. We're still not embedded. It's still a sort of a weekly, or there's more time, of course, allocated to the client organization, but it's not as much as an embedded model. So it's still cheaper than what an organization would pay for an army of coaches to come in and help them transform.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Did we cover off everything? Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think so. I think it was pretty comprehensive. Thank you for probing and asking. And for anyone out there that wants to learn more about the Disruptor Method, there'll be some links, of course, in the show notes. Just visit disruptormethod.com. There's a quiz that you can take. It's a very simple 4-question quiz to help you determine if you are a disruptor or if you will be disrupted. And it doesn't matter what your answer is. I mean, if you are going to be disrupted or if you are a disruptor, you still may need help. And so if you take the quiz, give us a call and we can discuss your results.
Sounds good.
Thanks for the questions. They were all really spot on. So I appreciate it. And thanks for watching. See you all next time.